All right. Hey guys, first LinkedIn Live here, hiring with Hutto. This is Predictive Hiring Analytics Part 1. So there'll be two parts to this. My name is Mark Hutto. I'm the founder and chief encouragement officer of Reveal. Company's been in existence for about 15 years now. I spent a number of years before that in corporate recruiting at what is now Wells Fargo. Spent a little bit of time with Deloitte, but all the time there was starting out as recruiting and then leading recruiting and sourcing functions. So stepped out in 2006 to do this. And as I mentioned, LinkedIn Live, so it's real time. We're looking for comments and questions in the chat. Please don't hesitate to do that. Also, if there's topics you want us to touch on in the future or just challenges that you're having in your context and whatever kind of recruiting you're doing, pop them in the chat. And if we have some views on it, we can certainly build some content around that in the future. Not to say that, we can address anything and everything, certainly. So one other thing, the YouTube channel is you just go to YouTube, search for Reveal Global Intelligence for subscribing to that. And this video and others are there. This one will be there. There's others there, and we're continuing to build content there. So do that if you'd like to keep up. And I want to introduce my wingman for the day, Justin Maharana. Justin is our marketing programs manager here at Reveal. And I'll let him introduce himself and tell you this cool little story behind his nickname, Lil Sauce. So when we tend to give nicknames here at Reveal, and Justin got his before we really even talked to him about working for Reveal. It was before his second interview. And one of my colleagues, Brandy Hirschbach, said, this guy coming today, marinara? And I said, no, Maharana. And she said, no, I like marinara better. And I said, I'm not sure that that's appropriate. And she likes to put a little rapper spin on nicknames that she gives out, which is why we got Lil Sauce. And Justin just owned it. He signs all of his emails Sauce. So here's some extra sauce on the side for you today.
Thanks for that great intro, Mark. Yeah, that was the second time I met Mark during an interview and the first time I met Brandy. So when she just said that kind of fun and balance of just meeting with them to immediately struck a chord with me in a positive way. And here I am today. I'm the marketing program management for Reveal, guys. We're very happy to be here on this live event and to have a channel where we can engage with you in real time. Mark is big on sharing his wealth of knowledge, his 25 years in recruiting and talent acquisition on a corporate level. So we're really excited to share that knowledge to you in real time. As Mark said, we would like to make this as interactive as possible. Please drop in your questions in the chat. I will be your Vanna White for the day. Not quite as lovely, but I'm doing my best with what I got. I'll be monitoring the chat, so just ask questions away there, and I'll bring them up to Mark as it goes. And just like Mark said, go ahead and subscribe to our account on YouTube, Reveal Global Intelligence. We'd like to post videos on recruiting technology, use cases, as well as solutions to problems that we think you're having, like managing the vast world of recruitment technology. With that said, I'll just echo what Mark said. Please pop in what your challenges are, what your pain points are. Mark and I meet every week, and we talk about different content we can create to help solve those problems for you all. Instead of us trying to guess and try to predict what you guys need, it would be great to hear from you, and we'll be happy to put together some valuable content and deliver it to you so you could go ahead and be successful in your role. Now, without any further ado, Mark, I know everyone's excited to share this tool that you created with them to analyze predictive hiring.
Yeah, so topic is Predictive Hiring Analytics Part 1. There's enough to where we're going to do a Part 2 about a week from now. So watch your LinkedIn thread for that, your stream. I'm going to just pause for a minute and give some mad props, if you will, to a guy named David Szary. David Szary of Recruiter Academy, Rogue Talent, Lean Human Capital. Those are his companies. David used to come to the bank when I was working there. He did this for about 2 or 3 years in a row. He'd come and deliver Top Gun Recruiter Academy training, great training. And one of my favorite parts of it was this, I think he called it metrics that matter or something like that, but it was eye-opening. And over the years, I've sort of added a little extra to it. So David is phenomenal in a lot of things, but certainly the metrics, he's a master at that. So really a big fan of his, and just wanted to give him proper credit because he got me started in thinking about metrics in this way. So here's the thing. So the problem that we're trying to address here is, as a recruiter, hiring manager, leader in recruiting, let's say you're confronted with 1 or 5 or 50 openings that you've got to resource, and you've got to plan, and you've got to think about process and tools in place. But there's not maybe a tool in your life that allows you to do that. That's what this tool is about. So how do you resource it, and what can help you drive efficiency through that process that you're designing? That's what this tool is about: predictive hiring analytics, being able to predict what you need based on the analytics for the hiring project. So a lot of tools here, and certainly in part 2 in particular is going to be loaded with some different tools. That's why we're splitting it up to try to keep this at about 15 minutes today. So it's a good thing this is on LinkedIn Live, which will be recorded and put on YouTube so that you can come back to it. And if you want to see anything, you want to receive anything that we're putting out here, just email us at givemethegoods@revealglobal.com. Givemethegoods@revealglobal.com. Okay, so let me jump right into this tool and share with you how this thing works. And it's a very simple Excel file, but it's simple in design and quite informative in its utility. So let me get this turned on here. All right, here we go. Okay, so let me just kind of orient you to what you're seeing here. This is the steps in the process. So these are the steps in the process, but each process is a little different, of course. So we've designed one that we're using now that is very different from this. It has multiple steps in it, involves a lot more technology on the front end from a sourcing perspective. So these are usually custom built, but in this case, we're talking about, the people that you identify to phone screen by a recruiter onto the hiring manager for round 1 and 2, and then going through background checks. And in this example, we're going to play with the number of 25, maybe a little bubble in hiring that a company or a business unit is experiencing. So what you're seeing in green are the conversion rates, pass-through rates for each step in the process. And I'll dive into those a little bit here in a minute. I like to refer to these as control points. And for every control point, there are control measures. But think of control points like blood pressure. So blood pressure is a control point. It's just a number. But if you don't like that number and you want to improve it, there are multiple things you can do, control measures. So control measures for blood pressure are things like diet and exercise, medication, changes in your lifestyle. So think about that. And so again, for each of these control points, there are multiple control measures. And we'll get into those again in round 2, part 2 of this predictive hiring analytics, and we'll dive into some really cool stuff. One thing that Lou Adler built and introduced us all to years ago, the performance profile, brilliant. Got to give him all the credit for that. But there's a lot of other stuff here. Crystal knows, Whole Story. I love this little company, Whole Story. They're not so little anymore. That John and Aaron and Darren started in Seattle. Brilliant job that they're doing. Humanizing hiring is their tagline. I love it. So we'll get into this in round 2, but to show you what the importance of improving these control points, these conversion rates here, let me dive in a little deeper here below and show you the resource planning tool of this. So when you know how many you have to hire, and for instance, that you've got a recruiter who's got to phone screen, multiple recruiters have to phone screen 529 people, and hiring managers that have to review 106, and they might have to interview 74, and then again another 56. Where's all that bandwidth coming from? How many hiring managers and interviewers and recruiters do you need? So that's what this resource planning is about. And I'm going to skip right past it and come back to it, because what's built into that, those simple formulas, it's a very simple layout, great planning tool because it's simple, is what are your rates of production in terms of how many people you're identifying per hour? And I'm talking about passive talent in particular in this model. So in some cases, you can identify 10 an hour or 2 an hour or 25 an hour. but the quality of the candidates identified as what you're looking for. So 10 an hour is not a lot, but it is if you're going to dive deep and do your research on each person, whether you're finding them on LinkedIn or like we do ethical telephone identification, calling into companies without rusing or any of that nonsense. And we'll identify individuals at a given rate. Certainly the visibility of that person, of that role, has a lot to do with their rates of production. Every 8 hours in this model, we range from 8 to 12 hours in most of the searches that we conduct. And I missed this on the beginning. Reveal is not a contingency firm. We're not a retained firm. We're not an RPO. We're not temporary staffing. We bill hourly or on a project basis, and it allows us to look at things very differently. And when you bill by the hour, you watch every minute, and so we track our hours more than probably most firms or most recruiting organizations do. So it gives us the ability to know this as just kind of table stakes for us. So what's going into that 8 hours is listed here. You can kind of see all the things that go into finding or reaching out and dealing with no's and yeses and not qualifieds and so forth. The little superscript numbers here are tied to the boxes above. So when you get into 3, here's 3. About every 45 minutes, we're going to make the assumption that the corporate recruiters that we're typically delivering candidates to, it's their time to review, submit, and debrief and so forth, get them scheduled. And hiring managers, probably about an hour a piece for phone screen and then second round interview. So that's what's going into those assumptions in the resource planning section. And then some success or performance criteria like the persistence that we practice here at Reveal is polite, professional, and very persistent. It is possible to do what we do, which is you might leave, voicemail, email, in-mail, text, and if it's an executive level position, we'll send a very discreet FedEx confidential package to make sure we're getting attention from that individual. But if you're going to leave multiple voicemails for people and you're going to do that 6, 12 times or more, how do you do that without crossing that line? How do you do that without really putting someone off? And we've had 4 complaints in 15 years for that level of persistence, 4. And every week we get 1 or more unsolicited compliments for that persistence. So there is a method to that. Happy to talk about that. And then other assumptions like, you're going to properly close out candidates to make sure that the experience is positive so that you can approach them again in the future. So from a planning standpoint, with all that understood, this is really simple formulas: hours, days, and months. So this allows you to say, if the hiring manager, the business unit says, we got to get this done in a month or 2 months, what have you, then what can you change from a planning perspective? The number of people and the number of hours per day that they're going to invest in the work. So obviously, if you increase the number of people, the time goes down. 18 business days goes down from 24. You can also increase the amount of time per day that those people invest to reduce the time, days, hours, and months. So that's very simple. The formulas are laid in over here. Quite simple stuff there. But let me take you to this and give you a couple of things to play with when you get your hands on this tool. So let's say this was, let's start from the top here. 55% of the people that we are pursuing, we connect with. That's on average for us across all searches. And that's not because we couldn't reach more than 55%, but that's because by the time the job gets filled or the jobs get filled, we are finished pursuing people, chasing them. So there's no need to connect with more than 55%. We generally can convert 20% of that 529, we can convert to qualified and interested. It's lower if there's relocation involved or it's a highly competitive market for that particular talent. But that 20% becomes 106. And if they're high quality submittals to the hiring manager, they will agree to see 70% which means I'll phone screen 74 of the 106, and that's how it flows from there. So what I love about this is if you want to improve any one of these numbers, then you look at these control measures, which we'll cover in the hiring analytics part 2. And if you only take it up 5%, then everything above it comes down, right? So you're gaining efficiencies in multiples when you can improve a pass-through rate or conversion rate here. The other thing
Mark,
to think, yeah.
We have a question from Charles here. He wants to know what pass-through rates he should use if he doesn't have any historical data to build upon.
Yeah, hey, Charles, thanks for the question. Appreciate the live interaction. Charles, I would start with these until you track your own and start seeing a pattern develop. And part of this tool will show you how to do that. But these are fairly standard. I think these are good assumptions for the most part. But one thing you want to pay attention to in this one is in a bulk hiring, you're not, obviously this is kind of simplistic, but if you're hiring for one person and you got 3 or 4 finalists, you can't hire them all. But when you're in a hiring project like this, of course you can hire more than one out of 4 candidates or 5 candidates. So if it was one, your hiring manager is going to want more than 2 finalists, right? So you would adjust here to say maybe 30%, and they're going to make their decision out of the 4 down to 1, to the one that gets hired. But because this is a larger scale example, you'd probably keep it at something like 50%. So these are good standards, and Charles, somewhat intuitively is the answer as well. You're just going to kind of know that about 90% of the people are going to pass the background check and move through to the accepting the offer. So that's how that works. We're at 17 minutes. We told you about 15, give or take. So in part 2, we'll cover these tools here, which includes things like the career drivers. That's really cool to talk about that with candidates, coach them through what the circumstances have to be for them to make a change. The why reveal is an incumbent interview that this could be why your company. We'll talk about this one pager that you can put in the hands of a hiring manager that helps them to understand all the things they can do or not do. I know that's super small, but to help the search or the hiring project succeed, struggle, or fail. This is all one pager coaching tool. We'll go through candidate care and counteroffer advice, and then we'll touch on some of my favorites here, which are Crystal Knows. Love this company. If you haven't seen this, go check it out. We'll cover it in round 2. Whole Story, the company I was telling you about by these Humanized Hiring. Love it. But these great brains at Whole Story designed, invented this thing. But we'll go deep into some really cool stuff when round 2 comes up. But I'll wrap it up here. Justin, anything else before we adjourn?
Yeah, we have a couple more questions I'm picking out here. One of them is from Kim, and she wants to know more about how you could be persistent without crossing that line. You said you're very persistent, but you've only gotten 4 complaints in 15 years and a lot more unsolicited compliments.
Yeah, it's Kim, thanks for the question. There's something you probably already know well, and that is leaving a voicemail for someone in particular allows you to convey more about what you're wanting to speak to them about and why. But it's about looking when we're doing it, we're looking at their LinkedIn profile or whatever we have on them to say, I love your experience here, here, and here. I was talking to the hiring manager the other day. They asked me if I'd made contact with you yet. You're fitting that into the voicemail, and then you're saying, look, one of the things that we are very committed to is polite, professional persistence. So if I look forward to speaking to you soon, but if I don't hear from you today, I guess I'll speak with you or your voicemail again tomorrow. So if you tell them you're going to be persistent and there's a little relief, when I'm delivering stand-up training and I walk through that example, there's like a little chuckle or a little relief that most people have because it's very personal. You're being extremely honest. You've done your homework and you're being very, professional and polite about the fact that you're going to be persistent. Anything else, Justin?
Yeah, we have one more here from Taylor, and she wants to know in very simple terms, how do you track and produce those control point metrics that you had up earlier?
Well, it's kind of similar. Thanks so much, Taylor. It's kind of similar to the question from Charles. There are tabs along the bottom that in that tool that you can track each person and the date they move from one step to the next, and you can calculate your conversion rates from that. So happy to cover that in more detail or depth in part 2. Thanks, Taylor. Justin, anything else? We can wrap up.
Yep, that should do it and wrap it up, guys. Again, thank you so much for joining our first live event here on YouTube and LinkedIn. We're really excited to be able to meet and engage with you guys in real time to solve these problems. And like many other live events, we respect that you're all very busy people and accomplishing your goals. So our intention is just to take up 15 to 20 minutes of your time, really deliver value that we believe you could implement into your recruiting practices so you guys could be successful. Mark, any closing remarks?
Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Thanks.